We'll give it another minute or two for folks. I think there might be a few more folks downstairs. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll call the meeting to order. First thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and open with prayer. So you fold your hands. Lord, guide us through this meeting just as we work to call and strengthen our school and learning center staff to the glory of your name and to help in driving growth. Also, Lord, thank you for giving us the acceptance of the call from Paul Lang so that we may continue to move forward with a leader and shepherd on a full-time basis as we start to move forward through and after this pandemic and challenges that we faced. Please guide us through the years to come, Lord. Amen. So I apologize that there's lots and lots of documents here. Obviously, there's two things that we're looking to accomplish today. It's calling a ECM director, and I apologize for ECM. It's Early Childhood Ministry, just to spell that acronym out. And then also a school teacher, given Stephanie Pasillas had accepted the call to go to Port Orchard, Washington. And so if you turn it on the agenda side, if you flip it over, there's a little bit of information that's there before we get really into the detail that was provided in candidates and walk you through a few different things that are happening. So obviously, a couple months ago, we did vote as a congregation to continue with the school, continue with the Learning Center. There were obviously challenges from a overall school enrollment. You can see where we currently are sitting today. There were obviously risks that we may not have had any students and would have caused some challenges. I'm happy to report that we do have students that will continue to allow us to continue to have the Christian Day School and continue to operate the Learning Center, just given the fact that we are not licensed at this point in time. But you can see from a 2K perspective, we don't have any students at this time. 3K, 2 students, 4K, 6 students, 5K, 3 students, 3rd grade, 1 student, and 4th grade, 1 student. So what we currently have is a vacancy that's there for the 5K, 3rd grade, and 4th grade perspective. We are going to, we have discussed with Jim Young, he will, obviously as his call as a teacher is ending, he will continue on a part-time basis as the school administrator. And they're obviously from that perspective, as the school is coming down in enrollment, there will be limited time to that role, but he is graciously continuing in that on a part-time and hourly basis. Doris Perch, who's here in the back, had assisted us as a part-time administrator for this past year, and we're very thankful for the work that she's done. But it was more of just a one-year commitment from that perspective. And then the early childhood ministry, as we went through on the voters meeting, that we would look to call so that we could start to pursue licensure for the Learning Center and be able to make that stand alone on its own. And then there's just another role that's in there that we'll talk through, a licensing specialist. And you can see in the three yellow are really, from the ministry council's perspective, the recommendations that we have of individuals to call. And a couple things that to point out. Let's first start with, I'll say, the most obvious of them. On the early childhood ministry, or the ECM director, Paul Lang's wife, Rebecca, is an ECM director. So she has a call that she is going to be abandoning basically at the end of May. And it's our recommendation that we call her to be the ECM for our congregation and overall our learning center. It fits very nicely from her historical perspective and what she's done. Her information was not initially in the call list, but we did ask that she be added to it. So that's why there's a separate sheet for her in the information that is presented there. When we look at the teacher side of it, given our limited enrollment, we, as ministry council, we didn't feel it was appropriate to call and have someone physically move or leave another location just given the low enrollment. But we have other people within the congregation who have actually taught in our school for actually semesters and have historical experience in doing that. Carol Leary, who is local, like I said, member of the congregation, seems to be a very good fit for that, to have a call for essentially 1 year as we start to move forward with the licensure side that we have for the Learning Center. And once we're able to, as we've discussed before, and just to bring up the speed, as we look towards the licensure side of it, that will be able to make the Learning Center stand on its own and the school stand on its own, where we can look at them separately. Unfortunately today, since the Learning Center is not licensed, we need the day school and students in the day school in order to be able to keep that open, given what Wisconsin state law says. Then there's another individual, Fred Leary, as a licensing specialist. He and Carol are husband and wife. Fred is currently serving a call in Milwaukee, just with an urban ministry. I have to look exactly what the St. Philip's, yes, in Milwaukee. He is looking for a change in direction, and he has experience with setting up and getting child care services licensed, and would be a very good complement, just given Rebecca Lang would be really starting to come in, get underneath, be able to operate the overall learning center that we have, start to grow, start to move through outreach while we're also working from a licensure standpoint. The goal for that would be also for Fred would be a 1 year call. Now, I will say for both Carol and Fred, it could be that we don't necessarily call them, but we could extend to them just an offer from a part-time perspective. My preference would be to call and have it be a 1 year call, just to make it official, just given both of them are Fred is serving really in a Wells congregation today in St. Philip's. But overall, that is a little bit of just the recommendation of the council that's there today. I'll pause there, see if there's any questions. Dan.
I don't necessarily have any questions, Joey, but I've heard some of this from other sources, but my guess is that many people here don't know who LCCA is and how that ties into all this. Do you want to try and explain that today, or now you want to do this time?
No, so I just wanted to go through that. So yes, I can kind of start to go through that. So there's a little bit more information down below regarding the lease move and each Holy Trinity move timeline. Also within that voters meeting that we discussed that we look to move and extend, we've been in discussions with with a charter school, LCCA, it's Lake Country Classical Academy, who is really looking forward to leasing and eventually purchasing the building that we have in the East Campus next door. So I've been working with them on a lease, and there's actually a special voters meeting that we've got in 2 weeks from now. And we're going to be getting the lease document as well as an agenda out for that. But they are basically a charter school. They are non-denominational. They are not religious in any way, shape, or form. But they are looking, once again, to lease that building to be able to grow and start their charter school. And once again, they're looking to have that to lease the building starting July 1st. And at this point in time, we are making plans to be able to move the activities for the Learning Center from that building to the West Campus that we have here. It is a very good situation for them and for us, given their need to be able to bring a school up to par and to be able to leverage a building. And then also very good for us from an outreach perspective, and given that we'll have many families next door that will be there. They will not have a preschool, but we'll be able to leverage our preschool, and we'll be able to work with one another from that perspective.
Just stepping back, has friends here, I'm assuming all the recommendations have been discussed with those folks in there. Happy or preferring to go in those directions?
The only one that I would say that we have not had the full conversation with is with Rebecca Lang. And that was, obviously, as you can see, it was initially dependent on whether he would accept the call. And we didn't want to tangle those things. We wanted Pastor Lang to review his call initially and make a determination there. And that's essentially a little bit of the challenge with the timing that we had with this meeting. It's a little bit later than I would have liked, but we wanted to make sure Paul could go through his deliberation from that perspective. And then now, just given that and the tight fit that it has, that's basically why the recommendation for that. But that's the only one that I would say we have not had the conversations with. Yes?
I have a question about revenue. Did I hear you say that we were going to, if we decide to go to a 1-year call?
For Carol and Fred, it would be 1-year call. Yes.
So can we obtain licensure in 1 year?
That is going to be the goal. And if we aren't, we can extend at that point in time or have discussions at that point in time. But I think the goal would be is that we want licensure in a year. Dan?
Just a point of information, when I talked to Pastor Lang, I did talk to him about his wife. Current position as a leasing director, in fact, we looked for a leasing director, and that could probably be very good. So they're aware of that whole concept. It's not blue. Perhaps that has something to do with the position, certainly what our needs were. And just another little bit of information on the LCCA program, that they're a very well established school, even though they don't exist yet. Okay? They're very well funded. They're not looking to rent just our property, but they're looking to rent St. Matthew's School as well. So they're going to have a dual campus structure. It doesn't matter whether they're successful in renting our property or not, they're going to rent that one as well. Okay? So it's a very interesting concept. All outreach opportunities I think are really interesting for us. The fact that they don't have a preschool, that's the only opportunity benefit for us as a preschool to go down the road. So just 2 bits of information we maybe have as background.
Yep. No, thank you. And a few details. Yes. There's many details obviously to go through. Yeah, and even from a timing standpoint, while we may have been disappointed, if you recall our initial call meeting for a pastor, Paul Lang was initially second. I think the Lord was doing his work through that, because if we had called him at that point in time, I don't know if he would have accepted because of his wife's call. So there's a lot of things that it's been very, very, I'll say, obvious. And for some of you that I've talked to over the past couple of weeks, I've expressed that I wish God would just email me with what I need to do so I can do it. Because it's certainly challenging, and there's been a lot of twists and turns. But it does seem to be lining up very well, just based on the needs. And obviously, when you look at it for Paul Lang, for Rebecca Lang, as well as for both Carol and Fred, just given their needs and our needs are lining up very, very well for what we need to do and accomplish over the next year and going into the future. On the LCCA standpoint, the Lake Country Classical Academy, as they are looking also to rent the St. Matthew's property, they are not interested in purchasing that St. Matthew's property. The reason being is obviously there's a sanctuary, they don't have room for growth. They are extremely interested in our property here on the East Campus because of the size of the land, the building and how it's built. They are going to be putting quite a bit of money into that building once they do lease it. So there's a risk they may not buy it in the future, but they're going to actually increase the value of that property over the next couple of years.
Explain how a charter school operates.
It's similar to any other school. It's just essentially it's a private school. It's similar to ours. The only difference really is that they don't really have a religious backing. They do have a backing from a college called Hillsdale College. It's very traditional and very conservative. So it's something that will align very well to some areas that where we operate as well, outside of the religious aspect.
The charter.
Yeah, it's just a state. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
As a charter school, they are eligible for state funds.
Correct. Correct. I think there's something else I was going to mention. Essentially, right now they have 300 students that have filed for enrollment. They're trying to look to see how they could actually house all of those at this point in time. So it is likely in the future, as I've said, they're looking for expansion that they will be adding onto that building next door and being able to drive that. Really, they're looking for space at this point in time. In our school and building, just in the area, she's commented very much, Christina Vorex from LCCA that I've met with many times, that our area, our space just offers the best that they can find in the Lake Country area for the needs that they have. So that's a little bit outside of, obviously, the calls and information that we have.
So, referring to the call, and this creates discussion also going to the call. I think that it does seem like it's a really good idea to have couples being, because the communication structure is built in. And,
Positives and negatives.
Necessarily.
There might be some challenges, but I think the strength of couples is far outweighs the difficulties. But I don't know if I would guess that the ladies knew that we had this opening as part of the thought process or consideration that the Lord is speaking to them and having to. So if we want to go with a representation, I think it might be kind of clear.
Yeah, and as Dan had indicated, Paul Lang and I did have the conversation, but we didn't go into depth. So they know of the vacancy, and I've essentially told them, if you accept this call, it is highly likely that we will call Rebecca as well. But we didn't get into details, so I didn't want to lead you on that. We've had enormous discussions about it, but essentially we have had, I'll say, very minimal discussions from that perspective. But the key point, like you said, with the couple side of it, is going to be one of those things where it's a blessing, but it's also a challenge. And as we go through this, we have to set up the structures in order to make sure that we're not just relying on that. So obviously with Carol and having Jim as the school administrator, that will kind of separate from the child care perspective where Fred would be. And then also with Rebecca and Paul, we have to set up the right structures as to how Rebecca and that team manages into the ministry council so that it's not necessarily just they're working together and informing us as a couple as opposed to those individuals in their roles supporting the church.
So would you like a motion to follow the recommendation? Would you like a detailed knowledge as far as?
I would love that. Obviously, I want to be able to leave it open to the congregation as to whether or not we want to go into the other candidates that are there. But that's something that I would love for us to be able to go to that direction, given that from an expediency standpoint, but I also want the congregation to be able to have that ability to look at the rest of the candidates. Fred.
What a joyful day, and thank you, Pastor Lease, for sharing the joy this morning at the beginning of the service. And what a joyful day for Holy Trinity that there are options. There were so many days I came to various meetings over the last 6 months where I'm like, wow, that's our close. That's our close. And this is so different. Having said that, this is really unusual group of ways to handle calls and business. And I've already shared with Joe, first of all, you will not offend us if you choose to not do the lyrics. You will not offend the lyrics if you choose to go in a different direction. And secondly, I talked with Joe about just, well, this is really unusual. I would be glad to step out at whatever point in time we move into the call piece. I'll get that out on the table right away again. It will not affect me either way. I get it, this is just not the way most call meetings and business goes. So please, at any point in time, if anybody or Joe, if you sense to the group, just say, Fred, probably time to step up for a while. Oh, you can tell me how to hand it out. But Joe urged me to stay because there are so many other loose pieces that are floating around. So much, so I'm here for now.
Chris.
I was just going to say, under the teaching part for Carol, Leary, the recommendation, I had Carol worked with me in my classroom as a dean for about 6 months, and it was a joy to work with her, and she's so knowledgeable, and I guess according to this sheet with her name on it, there isn't much listed there. I could fill in that sheet for her just because we share ideas. She tells me ideas. We collaborated in the past. She's invited us to her home and to class to go through the gardens, and she's an excellent teacher. I feel she's totally amazing. I really respect her. So I just don't want that sheet there it's not giving a full picture at all of the gifts that Carol has.
Yep.
So I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Jim.
I would suggest that just as for good order that we do at least go through all the candidates on the call form, see if they will provide in line, just by the Senate for us. I mean, it's just basic good order.
Fair. Doris.
To Chris's point too, I find just in my own ministry that if I would fill out one of these sheets, it would give you a good background to me. I've actually only been called for 11 years, but I've been in the ministry over 40 and never been out of passion because I've done all kinds of subbing from 15 minutes at the end of the day to a long-term sub of 4 months. So just because I haven't held calls that long doesn't mean I don't have that background experience from being a volunteer, from being a sub, from being in classrooms. And Carol is in the same position with that. I know she works closely with a friend of his ministry at St. Philip's, and like Chris said, sometimes these comments don't really reflect the teacher's full experience because there's a lot of times no way to put all those things on.
Thank you, Doris. Dan.
I was just going to agree that we should just go through each individual position first. So I would recommend that we start with the early child position and go through the candidates for that and entertain a call. Or we want to do that and follow the same position with their
Sounds good. So obviously there's two packages that are in there. If you go to, you'll see at the top, there will be a Holy Trinity Lutheran Church CH/ECM director. And then there's also a separate file for Miss Rebecca Lang. Unfortunately, obviously, as you normally go through call meetings, especially for the school calls, I am not experts on these individuals. So I'll just kind of walk through each individual. here, but please go ahead and peruse the information that you see as you see it in front of you. But the first one, or I'll say the first one that was provided on the call list is Miss Elena Mercer. She is currently in Bethlehem, Bethlehem Lutheran School in Hortonville, Wisconsin. You can see basically her information at this point in time. She's 30 years of age, obviously in the area at this point in time, but I'll give you a moment to be able to look through the information that's there. From it, you can obviously see that for the most part, she's typically in the lower grades. It looks like childcare through 6th grade, being able to provide services there over a few different years to multiple different churches in Wisconsin as well as Minnesota. The second candidate that was provided was Miss Deborah Schultz. She's currently serving at Emmanuel Lutheran in Michigan. It looks like she's been there since 2005, 49 years of age, primarily just given the grades of experience, childcare through 4th grade has primarily been her mainstay from that perspective. And then the final one, obviously on the separate piece of paper, is Rebecca Lang. As you can see, she is currently 53 years old. She has experience, or she's been serving at Emmanuel Preschool in Findlay, Ohio. Has been also in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and essentially has childcare all the way through 8th grade and experience in being able to teach from that perspective, with the preference of it being childcare as well as the lower grades. And she's been obviously in Ohio since 2017, essentially the same time since obviously Pastor Lang has been serving his call there. I don't know if there's any questions with that, and even if there are, I don't know if I can help. If I would initially say if the congregation is leaning more, let's obviously for the sake of going through, let's go through the kindergarten through 4th grade teachers. Let's do it initially that way, and then if we've gone through the information, and if a motion seems to be made for accepting the ministry council's proposal, and we can put in a little bit more detail, we can do it that way. So just the kindergarten through 4th grade, there's another packet that is there, as well as with another file for that's there for Fred Leary. We'll just go through the packet that's presented. So the first one is Sadie Gawal. Hopefully I've pronounced that. She's in Waukesha, Wisconsin. So she currently is serving at Hustisford, Wisconsin at Bethany Lutheran School. Like I said, 40 years old and living in Wisconsin, primarily serving grades 2 through 5. It looks like from her experience and what she prefers as well. The second, as we've talked about, obviously there's very limited information, but we do have experience, is Mrs. Carol Leary. Fred, you probably know a lot. You can probably provide a lot more about some of her experience, but as you could hear with experience that we've had with her, very capable in teaching the grades that we've had before, or that we're looking for the call, but overall feel very comfortable with that recommendation. And then the final one is Miss Mary Mengel. She's 50 years old. She's currently serving It doesn't have it for some reason. But it's essentially in Milwaukee, or current location is Waukesha, Wisconsin as well, and 50 years of age. Preference from an overall grades is kindergarten through 8th grade, but primarily in the lower grades is what we have in need at this point in time. Any questions there? And then the other document is for Mr. Fred Leary, just information there, just given the presentation provided and the recommendation, just given his experience and his ability to look at and manage at primarily upper grades, but also experiences with licensing childcare facilities in the past, to be able to leverage his expertise and do so in as fast as a way that we can overall for Holy Trinity. So those are the candidates. If the congregation believes that the ministry council proposal is the best, I would ask for a motion to accept that.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? And once again, I will kind of, for a little bit more information on just the motion, is for Carol and Fred that it will be a 1-year call, and then a call also to Rebecca Lang for the ECM director position. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, thank you everyone for that information, for that vote. We will obviously communicate that over to those individuals and start to work forward towards that. Once again, goal is really to have licensure within a year. And when I say a year, I'm looking more towards the beginning of September, so maybe a little bit longer than a year. But a lot of things moving forward, and I thank everyone for their patience and communication over the past couple of months. But as we start to move forward with the lease of that building, the movement of things to one singular campus, and essentially kind of more towards a singular focus from a learning center perspective, I think that's going to be something that's going to be most beneficial for us to be able to leverage the outreach activities that we'll have with that group as well as out into the community. Pat, you have a question?
Well, just a comment. First of all, thanks to Dick Leary for picking up my action. But just on the school enrollment, just a point to know, some of those numbers have gone up by one, I guess, possibly.
There may have been some, yeah.
Some flex around a little bit throughout the summer.
And obviously the meeting can come to a close. I'll leave it open though before fully closing it. If there's any other questions just about the lease and LCCA, there will be a lot more information coming out, I'll say in the next day or two, with the lease draft that we will be looking for approval for in 2 weeks. But once again, even prior to the congregational vote, I was having discussions with the LCCA about the building. I didn't want that to be in I'll say the minds of the congregation as they went and voted. But essentially, it is a great opportunity for us just to be able to get, I'll say, somebody else to pay for the expenses of that building and allow us to be able to kind of move quickly into consolidating. So I don't know if there's any other questions in relation to that, but like I said, more details to come here shortly. All right, good.
Before you lose everybody's attention, I just wanted to, totally unrelated, sort of unrelated topic, talk about the city management, which is set for the week of the 20th of June. Jim Young has agreed to go to that and serve in that situation, sort of as our principal liaison, individual or as a representative from the congregation. Normally we have 2 representatives from the congregation, pastor, and then the principal we have school. So I've agreed to go as one of our representatives. We still can certainly entertain having another representative from the congregation. A lot of student people that are here, we most likely be ones who be willing to take the time to serve. So if anybody has interest in doing that, please let me know today at the latest. Only because in order to get the assignments and look records for the convention, it's best to have that information specifically on Monday or Tuesday this week. So if anybody is interested in going to serve, it's normally Monday, Tuesday,
And just based on my conversation with Paul, he will be representing us at that convention. Just from a timing perspective, it is anticipated, I think I'm just looking at the calendar, June 6th is when we will install. He'll be serving at Abiding Shepherd through the end of May, which coincides with the call that Carol has for her ECM director position. So overall, good things there. Fred?
If you'd be willing, could you comment about just at least penciled in, if everything works out with Lease, with the other organization, what would be a typical timetable? So the congregation just has a little sense for what needs to happen and how fast.
Yeah, so, and unfortunately, the one that I printed off here didn't have, so you can see on the flip side of the agenda is a little bit of the lease move timeline. So the 25th, we're going to look to approve the lease. The last day of school is the 28th, I believe it is. And then basically it's June. June is the time to kind of be completing the move. And it's a little bit of changing the tires on the car while it's driving on the highway. Just as we have, still we'll be utilizing the building for the childcare, but then also starting to figure out how do we move. So during that time, we've actually been starting to move things back and forth, things that can be moved. And so we are taking care of some items, but there will be a pretty heavy time frame during that June move. And Pat Beaver has graciously accepted to kind of lead some of the coordination of that move and driving some of that forward. So he will be seeking volunteers and starting to work through those activities of what's that timing. And with that, we may look to leverage obviously external help to be able to do that, just given the timelines and things that are needed there. Pat?
You know, we do have a spreadsheet too on tasks, which kind of arranges things so that they can be done. And they're in order, if you will, with order. There's a list of items that can be done before the end of the school year, and those are in progress now. And then there's a list of items that have to wait until the school year is completed, and those will, of course, will have to wait. So, and those activities are going on. So, yeah, with a plan that people can work on their time, if folks that are willing to help, if they know the plan, whenever they have time available, they can. So I guess maybe we can publish that plan. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think once we get to an approval of the lease and starting to move forward and sign that lease, then we will really start to kind of ramp up communication and how we do that. Now, like I said, there's already things in motion, things that can move, leveraging space that's already in the building, getting rid of stuff that is not going to be used in the future, and those types of items. So some work's been done. I don't want to speculate on what percentage, but having done multiple walkthroughs, there's work to do. But from my perspective, I don't feel overwhelmed. Now, some will say it's because I don't have to do it, but from that perspective, I think it's definitely doable, and we have the ability to use, I think, external resources to move as well. Randy?
Questions from Pat. Pat, where's that spreadsheet located?
I just sent it out to like four people for them to review and
Yeah.
It'll be sent out to all.
and I asked for just asked for feedback before sending.
Yeah, it right now we're managing it just kind of with a small group, and then once we get through the approval of the lease, we'll be sharing. I think we'll work through how we communicate that with the congregation so we can identify what needs to be moved and seeking volunteers from that perspective. Other questions? All right.
Just to be clear, I wanted some of the key folks.
Yes.
Yourself included, just to approve it on, so because I don't know all the ins and outs of what's going on day to day here, so I just threw it out there and said, hey, send me any feedback. I haven't seen any yet.
Yep.
So
Yep. No, and it's a delicate balance of, I think Pat and I want to go start moving things, and Doris is sitting there, wait, I need to run a school, and Lisa the same way, we need to do this and that. So I think obviously from that perspective, there's different coordination and things to happen. So we're working through to communicate with those groups and understand what it is. Because I'm sure there's plenty of others that would just come start moving things as well if we let them know, but we want to obviously manage that as best as possible to make sure we can finish off the school year as well as leave the things that are needed for the Learning Center.
One other thing, sorry to keep going with it, but we're kind of leveraging our dumpsters that we have, our weekly contract, so we don't have to rent a larger one. So every week that things get filled.
Yes. We found that we as the Learning Center in school are very good at hoarding things. Since there was space over in the East Campus, the stores. So.
But we're not getting rid of stuff
Without agreement yet. All right, well, we'll close the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. If you want to stand, we can just go ahead and close it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and power, and glory, forever.
One last little bit of information, if anybody else is looking for, the agenda for the Bible study, for the Bible study, starting Tuesday. I asked all the copies if you could go ahead and draw on, so. Yeah, if you want a copy, or you can have it.
Yes. So I was going to add, and I apologize because in my rush I meant to ask you, and I didn't. It is absolutely, yeah. No, this is just kind of initial. Okay.
Thanks for streaming it.
Okay.
Thanks for streaming it. Good, you are. We have no one. I'm trying to remember. I have that guy's for something.